Hi, it's Ray from IELTS Focus. So I just thought I'd put together this video presentation thing about some reasons why you may not be hitting your band score or band 7. And I've chosen 8 reasons why you may be struggling to get band 7. So let's take a look. Now to begin with, how can I get band 7 in IELTS is a question I'm often asked on an almost regular basis. And people often email me other questions or statements such as, could you give me some tips to get band 7? Or I keep doing the exam and I always get a band 6. I need a band 7 because I'm doing my exam this Saturday. That's a common one. I'm stuck at band 5, why can't I get band 7? And so on. Now usually the problem is to do with writing or speaking, as these tend to be the hardest parts of the test. But there's actually 8 reasons I've chosen here of why you're not getting band 7. And I just want to briefly go through them, and then I'm going to look at them in more detail. So doing the exam over and over again, that's a common problem that people run into. Consuming too much information, going on to every YouTube video, every blog that's out there, and just overloading on IELTS information. And not targeting and fixing your weaknesses. This is a key thing you have to do before you can really level up your score, is to really find your weaknesses. Having a negative attitude and not being open to constructive criticism. When I mean criticism of your writing or your speaking, not personal criticism. Making excuses, not finding time to study. That's another one. People say, I'm just too tired, I'm exhausted, I don't have the time, and so on. Being unrealistic about how long it takes to get a band 7. Not wanting to invest in getting expert feedback, so this means not wanting to actually pay any money for an IELTS teacher, constantly expecting free material, but you actually need an expert or somebody who knows what they're doing that can help you here. And getting bad advice and focusing on things that are just not important in the exam. So let's take these one by one. First of all, don't keep repeating the exam. Many candidates, they just think that if they keep doing the test over and over again, one day they'll get lucky and they'll get a band 7. But in fact, you only end up more frustrated and more stressed, and you get depressed about IELTS. And if you're doing the exam over and over again, you're really just wasting your time and you're wasting your money. Now there's a famous quote, I think it was Einstein who said this, I'm not sure, but it says, insanity is doing the same thing over and over again and expecting different results. So think about that for a moment. So if you're caught in this trap of doing the exam over and over again, you should really postpone doing your exam or delay taking your exam until you've found your weak areas and you've actually worked on fixing those. Now to do this, you'll need the help of an IELTS expert to help you find your weak areas. Unfortunately, a lot of people out there, they say they're experts in IELTS, but they're not really, so you need to find somebody who you can trust, somebody who knows what they're doing, who has experience, who has good reviews or good testimonials, and they can actually help you pinpoint the areas you need to work on before you take the test again. Another good technique here is to ask yourself a lot of questions. Give yourself about 15 minutes and ask questions to get to the root of the problem of what your weaknesses are. For example, you could ask yourself, is it writing that's my issue? If so, which part of the writing? Is it task 1 or task 2? Do I have enough topic-specific vocabulary? Or am I just learning lists of words? Because if you're learning lists of words and then just putting those into your essays, your essays are going to have problems with coherence and cohesion. To learn new words, you need to be really investigating the words, finding out, what synonyms go to words, collocations. You need to make your own sentences, and you need to get feedback on your sentences and on your actual vocabulary. So don't learn from lists of words. You could ask yourself, is it grammar that's my problem? And what are the grammar problems exactly? So you need to really narrow it down. rather than actually trying to fix every single grammar point or focusing on so many different grammar points, just find out what it is that's causing the problem with grammar. It could be just articles or plurals, for example. So you just focus on, fixing or learning the grammar rules for articles and applying that to your writing. It's the same with plurals or whatever it may be. So it may just be one or two areas you need to fix. And again, am I just learning a lot of grammar structures and not focusing on accuracy? Now, of course, in the IELTS marking criteria, it does say, range of grammar as well as accuracy. So if you've got a good range of grammar, then that's great. But the thing is, if you've got a good range of grammar structures, but they're not accurate, then, you're wasting your time. You need to really focus on the accuracy with the grammar that you've got. Maybe you're having trouble thinking of ideas. So that's idea generation. Again, ask yourself, am I answering the issues in the task question? Some people write very generally about the task and they're not actually spending time to analyze the task question and spending at least 10 minutes planning the essay. And you need to really get straight into the issues that are in the task question. Am I trying to use complicated high-level ideas in my writing? Again, it doesn't matter about how smart or complex your ideas are. You just need to answer the question simply and concisely. Again, is my writing easy to understand? Is it easy to follow? Again, you don't have to use loads and loads of complex sentences. You can keep it quite simple, and you just need to explain your main ideas. And as I said earlier, you need an expert really to help you find your weak areas. So you've got to find someone you can trust or somebody you know has a good track record of teaching IELTS. And it could be somebody online, it could be somebody in your area. Next point is don't consume too much information. Now there's so many YouTube channels out there and blogs, Facebook groups, all dedicated to IELTS, that a lot of people just end up consuming information and not actually taking action. They're just looking at all these different blogs and they're getting all this information. And the problem is it can lead to overwhelm. This is where you have too much information to deal with, that you don't know what action to take, and your brain just gets overloaded. So just focus on one or two good blogs, or one kind of Facebook group that can help you, one teacher really that can help you, rather than jumping around. Take action, that's the key to it all. And of course, with so many sources of information, you'll probably end up just getting conflicting advice, and it will leave you even more confused and frustrated. So again, you need to find somebody who can give you detailed feedback on your work, whether it's your writing, your speaking, whatever it may be, and just stick to their advice if you can trust them and they're good. So targeting your weak areas, again, I keep mentioning this is crucial. You must find what your weak points are first so that you can rectify them, otherwise you're just going to get nowhere. So you may have to submit your writing to an expert or get your speaking evaluated, and you need to get assistance from someone who actually has the experience teaching IELTS. So for example, I mentioned it earlier, if you've got a problem with your grammar, for example, articles, plurals, then just focus on those only. Why learn loads of new grammar structures? Just fix the problem areas only. If speaking is weak, find out what exactly the problem is there. So is it your pronunciation? Are you using very formal language in the test? Because in the IELTS speaking test, you can actually speak quite informally. It's not a formal test for the speaking anyway. Maybe you're hesitating too much, or you're anxious, you're stressed, you're running out of ideas. So again, find out exactly where the problem areas are and then get to work on those. And then another thing is that if you're stuck at a band 5, it may just be that you have poor general English ability and that you actually need to develop your skills, your grammar, your listening, your vocabulary. So you may have to actually take a general English course before you actually even attempt IELTS. Because somebody who's at band 5, their level would be around about sort of pre-intermediate kind of level. But to get a band 7, you need to be around about upper intermediate level. And to jump from a band 5 to a band 7 is huge. It's a huge jump. So you need to maybe work on your fundamentals, the fundamentals of your English. So the next point is developing a positive attitude. Now, because IELTS is a high-stakes exam, there's a lot of pressure to get a good score. But the thing is that negative thinking can actually ruin your chances of hitting your target score, just the way you have your attitude, really. So let me give you an example. So you've got a negative attitude would be, for example, IELTS is just a business, they're only out to make money, and they're failing people, it's just a scam. But actually, it's just an English exam, and there is actually a set marking criteria that's laid out by Cambridge, and all examiners around the world are trained to the same standard. So it's not really a scam, it's a proper system, it's a proper marking criteria with examiners around the world trained to the same criteria. Another thing is, you may be thinking, I've taken the test 5 times, I can't raise my score, I'm still at band 6, I'm going to take it again and hope for the best. And I mentioned this earlier about doing the exam over and over again. If you're just hoping for the best, then you're not going to go very far, to be honest. One good way to think about it is this: I'm not going to take the exam until I've clearly identified and fixed all my weak areas. My last teacher kept crossing out my mistakes. He corrected too much. He was too critical of my writing or too critical of my speaking. And really, you should be thinking that criticism is actually good. When I say criticism, I mean criticism of your work, not personal criticism. So you should be seeking out criticism because it can show you where you're going wrong, and it's the only way to really improve. So if your teacher is correcting your stuff quite a lot and very critical of where you are, then that shows that he or she probably knows what she's doing. The examiner didn't smile in the test and seemed a bit serious. I lost confidence in the speaking test. I've heard this a few times from people. They said they lost all their confidence because the examiner, wasn't friendly. It's not really the examiner's job to be friendly. The examiners are only interested in your English ability. So focus on that in the exam. Just focus on your English ability. That's the only thing that matters. I want free materials and free feedback. I don't see why I should spend money on an IELTS teacher. Again, this goes back to what I was saying about getting feedback. To get good feedback or quality feedback, you have to make the financial commitment, and you can't expect everything for free. So you do have to, at some stage, you'll have to get a teacher or somebody who knows what they're doing who can help you in this area. Then again, it's very easy to fall into the trap of thinking, I don't think I can ever get a band 7. It's impossible. I can't get past band 6. Well, IELTS is hard work, that's for sure, but it's not impossible. Worldwide, thousands of students every week are hitting their target score. So you need to really make a mindset shift or a shift in your thinking. Now, finding the time to study, this is very important. A common complaint I get from students is that they just don't have the time to study. If you look carefully at your schedule, you need to really look at it carefully and think, well, where can I find at least 30 minutes per day to focus on my weak areas? Ideally an hour per day or even more, but even if it's only 30 minutes, it's something. So you have to really, look at your schedule in detail and find out where it is you can find that time. It's easy to make excuses, and I know how stressful it is when you're busy. But you really have to find that time to study. So, for example, you could download an interesting podcast in English that you can listen to on the train while you're going to work. And you can use that commuting time to, work on vocabulary. You can read news topics. You can listen to news stories. Reading is really, really important for developing your vocabulary. So you could use your, traveling to work time. Just find that time, whatever you do, you can find that time. And make your own study schedule. I did a video on this a while back about creating your own study schedule. So every day you work on something you need to fix until the day of your exam. So you create a kind of a calendar and you put in every single day, you put something in there that you need to work on. So as I say, I did a video on this a little while back. Now the next point is about time, how long it takes to get to band 7. So you've got to be very realistic about this. Many IELTS students have unrealistic expectations. I often get emails from people. They say, look, I've got my exam on Saturday, I need a band 7, can you help me? Well, no, not really. If you've only got like 5 or 6 days to prepare, then you're setting yourself up for failure. You need months of preparation. If you're at a band 6 and you want to get to a band 7, that's a big jump. It could take months and months. It depends on how much time you got to study. It depends on your weak areas. So, if you're only giving yourself a few days, then you need to really rethink that. If you're thinking like this, you're setting yourself up for frustrations. So you'll really need to make a study plan and dedicate a few months to your studies. Some students who are at band 5, they expect to jump to a band 7 in a couple of weeks, and again, this has been very unrealistic. And that's a huge jump. Even if you're at a band 6 and you want to get a band 7, as I say, I've said it before, it's quite a big jump. It's not impossible, but it takes a lot of work. So be very realistic about time scales and time frames. I tend to find that more realistic students are around band 6.5 and they want to get to a band 7. And in this case, their weak areas are easily fixed and they tend to have good vocabulary and grammar overall. So their general English ability is pretty good. And they're setting themselves a lot of time to study, and they just need that half band score. That's a little bit more realistic. So the next point is about getting bad advice and focusing on things that are not really important. Now, many so-called IELTS teachers, they actually have no idea about how to teach IELTS because there's no formal qualification from Cambridge to become an IELTS teacher, and that's the problem. There's only training for examiners, IELTS examiners. So anyone can claim to be an IELTS teacher, and a lot of them don't really know what they're doing. They don't understand the marking criteria or how to evaluate a student's work. Maybe they're good English teachers, but they don't have any real experience with IELTS. So the problem there stems from the fact that there isn't a qualification to be an IELTS teacher. So as a result, there is so much information on the internet about IELTS, which is actually inaccurate. And of course, some teachers will promise you a band 9 just to get you into their school. Any school that talks about band 9, then you need to be kind of careful of that. I never talk about band 9 to students because band 9 is a pretty high level, especially in writing. In fact, I don't think I've met anybody who had a band 9 in writing. I've had a few students who got band 9 in speaking, but not in the writing section. And in fact, a lot of organisations, they don't ask for a band 9. The most they'd ask for is maybe a band 7.5 or a band 8. Now, fake or misleading task questions can confuse students, so only use Cambridge books or the British Council website, IDP or IELTS.org. So be careful where you get your materials from, your practice materials. And of course, another problem is obsessing about things that have no impact on your score. These are kind of myths that have been circulated around the internet. And we're going to look at some of those now. For example, make eye contact with the examiner to get a better score. Use as many complex sentences as you can for a higher writing score. Never repeat words in an essay. Paraphrase everything. Use idioms in your writing and your speaking. You'll get a higher score. Body language is important in the speaking test to impress the examiner. And your examples and the essays, they've got to be real because the examiner is going to check them. So you need to be a bit of an expert on the topic. Over 350 words in the essays will give you a higher band score. And I need to use long academic high-level words to get band 8 or 9. None of these are true. None of them. Making eye contact with an examiner doesn't really make much difference. The examiner is listening to your English ability. using so many complex sentences. You don't need to use loads and loads of complex sentences, and there's a big difference between complex sentences and complicated sentences. You can actually have a mix of complex and simple sentences, and they're actually pretty straightforward. They're easy enough to write. Never repeat words. Well, you can't write an essay without repeating words 1 or 2 times at least, and especially with paraphrasing. You can't paraphrase every single word. Sometimes you have no choice but to repeat words, as long as you're not overdoing it, obviously. Idioms, I'd be very careful of using idioms. You really need to know how to use idioms, and I wouldn't use them in the writing. I'd just avoid them. Body language doesn't make any difference. In the essays, your examples, they don't have to be real. You can actually make up an example, but it's got to look real. The examiner's not going to check that. As long as you're able to support your main ideas and you can use a specific example and it looks kind of real, that's fine. This is not a university essay. It's an IELTS essay. Long essays, over 350 words. If you write a long essay, you're going to be more liable to making mistakes with your grammar and your vocabulary, and you're going to be more liable to writing irrelevant information. And of course, you just don't have the time to write a really long essay. My advice, I'd say aim for around about 260 to 290 words in writing task 2. That'll be fine. You can get all your ideas in that word count. And using long academic high-level words, well, it doesn't make much sense. In fact, a lot of really, really good essays, they just use, pretty straightforward words, and they've explained their ideas very well. So you don't need to use special, high-level, so-called high-level words. So just to summarize, don't keep doing the exam until you've actually fixed your weak areas. Take action, don't just consume information. Get to your weak areas, target them, fix them. Develop a positive approach and be open to criticism on your writing and on your speaking. You need criticism to develop. Find the time to study, don't make excuses. And be very realistic about how long it actually takes to get a Band 7. Be realistic about your time frames. And invest, you may have to spend money in getting expert feedback. And be careful of bad advice and myths that are out there on the internet. So thanks for your time. And if you have any questions, then check out the blog, IELTSfocus.com. There's a lot of material on there that can help you, speaking, writing, etc. And okay, great. Thanks for your time.